Start off with some Genus news here. Got some new beers on tap coming out, doing some goods. Tim Harstead, that's just the way everything is set up. Also, it's dark and mysterious, and that helps. Alright, what we got on there? Brewvana up there. That's a new fun release in their Poke Sour series. Blueberry raw beer on tap. Super nice and clean. Little blueberries.
We're going to be doing a release event on that one too. The release event is going to be April 2nd. So stay tuned for that. We're going to have some posters coming out and probably going to put an event up on Facebook.
Hopefully.
Also got a Huckleberry Milkshake IPA.
That one's tasty. I mean, same base as the Mango Milkshake IPA, just with some huckleberry in it instead of mango.
Yeah.
Yay!
Jung Hyo, thank you so much for the super chat. We appreciate you. I'm probably just trying to get a bingo card done.
It's definitely on there. And then we got a new Jerry on tap. A little bit different on that one was trying to take the concept of Irish Red, having that nice little bit of sweet fruitiness underneath that's not caramel, with a good little bit of roasty toastiness over the top of it. Not use any crystal malts. Just use melon malt or melanoid malt and a little bit of chocolate malt for that, and it turned out really good.
Yeah.
Not quite Irish, a little bit darker than Irish, but all the flavors are there, and it's pretty darn tasty.
Yeah, but we got in that right flavor range, and last week we did say that we're going to be talking about Irish Reds. That brings us to our Beer of the Week, bum bum bum, Beer of the Week, woo! Which is Irish Red Ale. Overall impression, an easy drinking pint, often with subtle flavors, slightly malty in the balance, sometimes with an initial soft toffee caramel sweetness, and a slight grainy biscuity palate. A touch of roasted dryness in the finish. Some versions can emphasize the caramel sweetness and more, while others the flavor of grainy palate and roasted dryness.
Basically, what that's trying to say is a bunch of people started making it wrong with crystal malt, and the BJCP was fine, we give up. You can have a little bit of caramel in there, but you shouldn't.
Yeah. Also, is the light in the shot?
Yeah, just the edge.
Appearance on that: medium amber to medium
Still
reddish
technically,
copper
that's just
color,
the top
clear,
corner, so
low
don't worry about it.
off-white to tan-colored head.
There
Average
you go, it's out.
persistence on that. There's a little bit of range on these guys, but you're basically looking for that nice kind of brilliant, bright, shiny red, maybe a little bit darker red on it. Not really going into the amber range. You're not really going into the brown range. So yeah, there you go.
Aroma, you're looking at a low to moderate aroma, neutral grainy with a light caramely sweetness, some toasted toffee flavor, and it can have a light buttery character, although this is not required, and in my palate is not welcome. Hop aroma is low, earthy, or floral to none, usually not present. Quite clean. If you use the darkness ale strain, you can get a little bit of Irish ale funk, is what I like to call it. And if you ferment this super low and slow, not super low, but like 66 degrees, and you don't have a VDK rest, and you underpitch and do a lot of stuff. I mean, usually still darkness is pretty good at not throwing diacetyl, but it still can, so it's allowed in this style.
I just personally wouldn't accept it because it is a brewing flaw and it shouldn't be in there.
Yeah, so don't do it.
Flavor: moderate to very little caramel, malt flavor, and sweetness. Rarely with a light buttered toast or toffee-like quality. Palate is often fairly neutral or grainy, or can take on a lightly toasty or biscuity note as it finishes with a light taste of roasted grain, which lends to a characteristic dryness to the finish. A light, earthy or floral hop flavor is optional. Medium to medium low hop bitterness. Medium dry to dry finish. Clean and smooth. Little to no esters. Balance tends to be slightly towards the malt, although light use of roasted grains may increase the perception of bitterness slightly. And that's also important to notice in there. The very little caramel malt flavor. You're not going for caramel malt in there. There should be residual sweetness coming from this beer that is not indicative of crystal caramel malts. It's indicative of processes.
It's malt dominated, but not by adding not adding the wrong flavorful malts. Mouthfeel is medium light to medium body, although there is an example containing low levels of diacetyl might have a slick mouthfeel. Again, not welcome. I equate that to like an oily slickness whenever diacetyl is present, especially in darker beers where there's enough flavor to kind of mask the diacetyl flavor. There's still it's the same feeling when you eat a couple kernels of movie theater popcorn that you feel like you can kind of scrape your tongue off a little bit. Like that slickness is what ends up in your mouth.
Yeah. Moderate carbonation, smooth, moderately attenuated. It should be really nice, smooth, easy to drink. Usually there's some residual sugar left over.
Do you believe in Bilbo Baggins? What's that trying to bait at?
I don't know, because you speak.
I do believe in speaking.
I don't know which bingo that one's going towards.
Depending on which Hobbit you read, he could be real.
Or could not.
Because there are two versions. Anyway.
Fun facts with... several variations exist within the style, which causes these guidelines to be somewhat broad to accommodate them. Traditional Irish examples are relatively low in hops and grainy with a slight roast dryness in the finish, fairly neutral in general. Modern export Irish examples are more caramelly and sweet, which is where we get the wrong version, and might have more esters. American craft versions are often more alcoholic versions of the original Irish export examples, as do we do in America.
Nah.
And emerging Irish craft beer scene is exploring more bitter versions of traditional examples. Finally, there are some commercial examples that sound Irish but are really just international export lagers with a Swedish palate, little bitterness. I'm guessing is that Killian's that they're talking about?
Yeah, probably something around in that.
These guidelines are written around the traditional Irish examples. Ish.
Yeah.
Ish.
And that is kind of where we sit on this. If you can tell, we like the more traditional Irish style, not the export that is super caramely sweet.
Yeah.
That's just not as good, in my opinion, anyway.
No. History. While Ireland has a long ale brewing heritage, the modern Irish red style ale is essentially an adaptation of interpretation of the popular English bitter style, with less hopping and a bit of roast to add color and dryness. Rediscovered as craft beer style in Ireland, today it is an essential part of most brewery lineups, along with pale ale and stout.
Yeah. I will also say, when we were talking about Scarlet Ale or Ruby Ale a little while ago and researching that one was also a precursor to red ales. Although at the time that these beers were being brewed, there was way less designation between beer styles and more of you just went to the pub and got a beer and got poured whatever they had. But also a heritage marker. All right, so we're gonna start off with Ish, which
is from
Bardic
Brewing Company. Oh.
Yeah, that's really low. It's 5.8%, which is really low for Bardic, and honestly, I thought Ish was closer to 8. So I was going to say we're going to start off with the most untraditional style, but...
Maybe they're saying it's like Irish.
It's...
That's exactly...
Ish. It's Ish.
Ish.
Bardic Brewing Company is known for doing very, very big beers because Mark likes to drink them thick and heavy.
Yeah.
Which I don't necessarily disagree with. Do it, Mark.
Yeah.
Get after it.
Characteristic ingredients?
Characteristic ingredients. Generally has a bit of roasted barley or black malt to help provide reddish color and dry roast finish. Pale base malt. Caramel malts were historically imported and more expensive, so not all brewers would use them. And you shouldn't. They're, honestly, in this style, a little bit of caramel malt can be acceptable, but there are much better ways to get the flavor and color out of there than caramel malts. Mellow malt is actually one that I'm becoming a huge fan of for that deep, fruity sweetness for that. There's some other really good things you can play around with. Style comparison. What do we want? We on to that? A less bitter and hoppy Irish equivalent to English bitter with a dryish finish due to roasted barley, more attenuative and less caramel flavor and body than the equivalent strength Scotch ales. Okay.
Yeah.
There you
Stats. This is a pretty broad category, like we said. Most American examples are going to be well above that ABV range, but it says 3.8 to 5, which put this one closer to the BJCP style. But I want to say pre-2015, that was a very different range. They're going off of when it stopped being the British bitter into the Irish ale, kind of, I think, original statistic, because they realized how much we played with the style. That can be anywhere from 9 to 14 SRM, so that's amber without getting brown, and all that redness is a red pop that comes from a hint of that roast malt. So it's not that medium, deep garnet range. It's that red pop from the roasted.
Yeah. Final gravity 1.010 to 1.014. I mean, the 1.010 almost seems a little bit too low.
Yeah.
They do actually tend to finish a little bit sweeter, but because of the roasted malts, taste drier, which is nice.
But for that ABV, I mean, that's still a relatively thick beer for that ABV range. Again, we'll probably end up with most of these being that higher alcohol, thicker body version, at least most of the commercial examples that you'll find here.
Definitely here in the United States.
Yeah.
Yeah. Because we like a little bit more booze.
A little bit more.
Not that that's a right thing. It's really good sometimes. You walk into an English pub and you can have just like 10 beers and go home fine.
Yeah.
Wake up in the morning and be like, man, I'm stuffed. How much did I eat? Didn't I drank? Nice.
Yeah. Talking about marks, this is, I would say, well within style, where the grain profile leans a little bit crackery and roast. Maybe a little bit more acidic for my taste, but still well within style. It's a well done beer, and it all the aroma comes forth is like that crackery graininess. So it builds the type of malt body that we prefer over the caramelly sweet thickness.
Definitely nice. Good.
Are you behind any questions?
Yeah, actually, I have,
most of them.
I have 3 questions.
There's the first question that we have from Ledgerl89. Do we do a small batch before testing out a new idea, or do we make full batch of beer? Because why not? I'll take this opportunity to remind everybody that we generally don't make the same beer twice. And when we say that, we mean it. There's no same beer from a 5-gallon to our 2-barrel to our 7-barrel. We're going to make a different beer. So every single beer that we make is new to us. Now, again, going on to that, it's not always exactly wholly new. When we're doing juicy IPAs or things like that, we have a really good malt base that we basically stay in, depending on the crops, and especially this year, we're going to have to change that up just a little bit. But basically about the same malt base, and we'll, change up the hops all the time on that. Or we'll do things like Jerry Red Ale, which basically my only requirement on that is to hit a certain SRM range, and honestly a certain alcohol percentage, just because the guy who we named it after loves it to be about that percentage. And then seeing how I can get that color through the spattering of malts we have upstairs. Sometimes we use wasted grains that somebody orders a homebrew package. They don't come in and pick it up. So then we'll take it and go use it in a beer and discover what it is and what we can make out of it.
It's a really fun guess and check game, though.
It is. Actually, it's really not bad because it can help out your skills as a brewer to brew anything well, because you have to perfect your process if you don't know what ingredients you're using. Another reason you should perfect your process. So basically, to answer your question, yeah, every batch is a new batch. It doesn't really matter the size, even if it's a 7-barrel batch. Generally, most of the time, those are new batches. Now we know the systems well enough to create great beers off of them, but they're generally new. All right. Steel Chair Brewing Co. You made the hard seltzer last night, but you didn't add the acid blend. Would you think you should introduce that to the brew? Generally in hard seltzers, I add my acid blend in at the very end before packaging. That way I can successfully control everything. I know the fermentation is done. I know there's no residual sugars messing up the perception of acid in there. Of course, you can always use an acid meter, find out what pH you're going to, what pH you really like. But I personally find every fermentation to be a little bit different, and you may need to slightly adjust that. So for me, it's always in the end. Right before packaging is where I'm adding the acid blend. That way I can completely control the flavor on that.
Steel Chair also streams on Twitch every once in a while, so if anybody wants to check him out and follow him, he puts out a stream probably once a week almost, maybe more.
Is that cool?
Link is in the chat now for him.
He also brought us amazing cookies once, and I still dream about those.
Did I get any of the cookies?
They might have gotten eaten too fast.
Dang it.
My daughter didn't even get cookies. Hey,
bring more cookies.
She refused a cookie. I asked her if she wanted a cake pop or a cookie. She chose the cake pop. They're her favorite thing in existence. And I warned her, like, these are not going to be here in the morning, baby.
Kind of sounds like her problem.
That was her problem. Yeah, add the acid into the end. That's the best place, especially after you've added the flavor, because the flavor is going to change that, and you should have different acid levels for different flavorings in it. All right.
Shark doo 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 doo.
All right, Lemaliga. Ooh, they're from Croatia. Pretty cool. How we doing? Just started a Rausch beer as we speak. Suggestions? Make it delicious. That's a pretty wide box right there. If you're using actual Rausch, if you're using actual Rausch malt, like German Rausch malt, you can actually go really heavy on that. There are some examples of 100% Rausch malt. It can convert itself. Generally, I think we go about 50% on that. Keep it simple. Let the malt speak for itself. Get as clean as fermentation as you can on that. Lagering does help that out. That really cool cold aging time, that'll help out. Really smooth the beer out on that. Don't get wild. Oh man, what did I do with the? There we go.
It got broken.
I was close to chat. Anyway, don't get wild with the hops or anything like that. Really let the Rausch malt speak for itself, and I think you'll be super happy with it. If you are not using Rausch malt, if you're using a different type of smoked malt, know the level of smoke on that and use it appropriately. If it's cherry wood smoked malt, I mean, you need like 1 or 2% of that. Not very much at all. If it's heavy peat malt, maybe just like wave it over in the end and you'll have a good little smoke in there. But
blow gently towards it.
All right. Next question.
If you guys are wondering why the framing is so weird and it's a little bit dark right now, it's because I was trying to get this in frame. I have a customer that came in yesterday that wanted us to have this built by 10. And I was working very, very late yesterday, so I came in early to try to get it set up, but we're this far into it, and so we're doing it live.
So that's going to be topic number. I'm going to continue to answer questions here. We're going to get some live build. Our topic number 1 is draft and draft Q&A. So you guys start firing off any questions you want, but also specifically about draft. We'll probably explain a couple of things because especially the Komos refrigerators, they have stuff we really like in there from all their parts and pieces. We'll try and explain to you why we like them and what they are, especially like the faucets, the tubing that they give you, the duo-type fittings are pretty cool. So we'll try to remember to explain that as we're going through it. Our moderator will probably help us out, toss us some questions, and we'll get after it. Robert Brown, at what temp do you ferment your NEPAs? And after the biotransformation, when you do your second dry hop, do you drop the temp after that, say to 5 degrees? And I'm willing to bet that Robert Brown is somewhere that uses the concussive scale instead of the Faraday scale. So 5 degrees would probably be crashing temperatures. 5 degrees, that's pretty low. I'm not going to convert that right now. Maybe our moderator will.
I'm on it.
So it really depends. That is a really, really, really wide question. 41? Okay.
Yeah.
Actually, that's a little warmer than I thought it was. I was figuring that'd be closer to like 38. Anyway. So, answer your first part of your question. That's pretty wide in there. It depends on what yeast you're using, what temperature you're going to ferment at, because a lot of them will perform differently. If I'm using any of the Quake strains, those suckers are getting jacked up to 95 degrees because I want them to rip. I want them to throw off all those really good flavors. The Verdant strain from Lallemand, one of my favorite for New England IPAs or hazy IPAs. I actually ferment that a little bit hotter. That usually goes to about 70 degrees on there. It throws beautiful flavors. Versus some other things. Or what is it? Imperial has citrus and dry hop. Dry hop has citrus in it, but both dry hop and citrus, I'll ferment those really hot, 85 degrees, because of what Sac Trois does, Saccharomyces Trois. Throws some really good flavors, citrusy flavors at those temperatures. If you're using the classic Conan strain, Barbarian from Imperial, New England, New England Ale yeast from Lallemand, not London 3, that's juice. I don't know what it is in Conan, or white yeast actually. Do you know?
Conan is white yeast doesn't have a Conan strain.
Yeah, that's why I don't know it. Good for me. Anyway, if you're using that, I would actually keep it at normal ale temperatures. I prefer 65 to 68 in there. Most of the British strains, I prefer 65 to 68, depending on how much I want to push the yeast character and push the fruitiness. Juice, London Ale 3, probably at the 68 range. Conan, probably more 65 range. So somewhere in there.
Hey, Tim, what about, since we're talking about yeast, what about Voss?
One of the quikes. I already answered that.
Okay.
But Voss is one of the quikes, and any of the quikes I want to rip fast, hot, and heavy. That's how they give you your best flavors. 95 degrees generally, somewhere between 90 and 95. I set my temperature at 90 so it can naturally reach 95 in there. Quikes love it. They're cool things. But again, depending on what yeast you're using, use the optimal temperature range for what you want to get out of that yeast, which is, a great way to give you no answer. Second, after the biotransformation, when you do your secondary hop, do you drop down in temperature on the secondary dry hop? In all honesty, I'm going to tell you what, for all of our New England and hazies, I don't do dry hops. I load the crap out of it in 2 different whirlpools, and I find that I can get enough hop flavor out of it by doing that. Doesn't really help you. And then to answer your question, if you are adding more hops in there, that's more sugars that can go into it. So you can still get biotransformation coming from that secondary hopping on it. If you do want to prevent that, you need to drop it down and crash it out. I would drop it to actual crashing temperatures. So, for you, closer to like 2 to 3 degrees. For us, 34, 35 degrees. Mainly to prevent any DMS or biotransformation or hop creep, if you will, in keg.
Yeah.
That. All right.
Somebody asked us a question about when to use flow controls, or do you control your pressure from your faucet or from your keg? We always try to get the keg to the right carbonation level. The only reason that you're working with CO2 pressures is to try to get the correct volumes of CO2 in your beer for the flavor of the beer. Knowing the volumes of CO2 that you want in your beer, then you calculate back for line length, temperature, and those kind of things.
Yeah. Jump Jasper. What normally is the pH on your seltzer? In all honesty, it super varies on that. Like I was talking about earlier, I like to change the levels of acids in my seltzer depending on the flavor. I also like to change the acids in there depending on the flavor for that. Say if I'm doing the sour green apple, my big flavor acid is going to be malic acid, because malic acid is actually... reverse that. Tartaric. Wow! Tartaric acid is actually the acid that's in apples and pears. So it gives you kind of a Granny Smith skin, a Granny Smith... or a green pear kind of taste already to that. So I use that in the majority of that. Versus if I'm doing a citrus one, a lot of citric acid and actually a lot of lactic acid. Lactic acid is very sweet and bright, very good for citrus things on there. So the pH levels will vary a lot and actually can be very surprising. One of probably the lowest pH seltzers that we have, besides the obviously sour seltzers, is cotton candy. Because cotton candy is perceived so sweet, I add in some really nice tart but soft acids to that. Some ascorbic acid, that helps preserve it. but it can add a really nice base layer that you don't really perceive, but really helps sharpen it up, as well as lactic acid, again, because it's soft and a sweet acid comparatively to the other ones. And it drops the pH down a lot, but because our flavor thresholds on those two are so high, you don't perceive it, you don't notice it as much, besides having a more drinkable seltzer on that. Again, versus something like the sour apple, where I hit that with malic and tartaric acid, which are super aggressive, very low flavor threshold. So the pH is probably a little bit higher, but you perceive it way more. In all honesty, what pH is our seltzers normally at? Trick question. They vary all the time. I add acid blends in to the flavorings to help pop the flavor, like adding salt to a chocolate chip cookie. Just makes it taste better.
So Adam has a actual Kegerator question. Since I just finished my keeper collar yesterday, what is your recommendation on stainless steel versus chrome faucets? Also, I think I've settled on Pearling.
All right, so I'll read that over here just to make sure that we can get that to podcast land. Adam Chumley just asked, since I just finished my keeper collar yesterday, what is your recommendation on stainless steel?
This means Keezer.
Keezer collar?
He probably means Keezer.
Yeah, well, he said keeper collar. And I just...
That's a him problem.
Yeah. Hey, man, I mean, whatever kinks you're into. Anyway, what is your recommendation? He probably means Keezer collar. Keezer being converting a freezer into a kegerator, just in case, if nobody knows. What is your recommendation on stainless steel versus chrome faucets? Also, I think I've settled on Perlick. Perlick is a type of faucet that goes on the front. What most people call taps are the faucets. The tap is the actual entire system from where the beer comes out all the way down to the keg. So, first let's start off. Stainless steel is always 100% of the time going to be better than chrome. Chrome is cheaper than stainless steel. For a home brewer, you're not actually using it as much as a professional system, so you can get away with chrome for much, much longer. But underneath that chrome is brass. Brass can rust, and some of that rust can actually be toxic. So you need to keep care of your brass much, much better, brass and chrome plated, much, much better than you need to on a stainless steel. Most of the time for a professional system, or if you are serving tons and tons of beer out of it, stainless steel is just 100% of the time, go for that. For most home brewers where you go through maybe like a keg a month or something like that, over the long run, stainless steel is going to be better. You probably won't notice the difference for a year or two.
If you're really good at cleaning, you might never notice the difference, but that takes being very diligent and cleaning all the time.
Like weekly, at least every other week at minimum, to do something like that.
So he actually did mean keeper with a $5 or $4.99 super chat.
Chumley just did come back, and he means keeper. He swears. Hey, go for it. Yeah, I'm gonna keep that for myself. But oh man, I found it somewhere. There we go. The basics on there, if you want to put the best thing on there and you have the money to be able to do that, do the stainless steel. It'll be less of a headache and long, down the run. Do it. Another recommendation that we have, you didn't put it on here, but you're settling on the Perlick, which is one of these forward sealing faucets. And I will grab a faucet here, my lovely assistant. What we mean by that. So most of the time, the faucets that you see have a big old round circle on the front. They have the little doodad down there, and they are rear sealing faucets. They seal right back here at the end of the faucet. Why that's not as good as a forward sealing faucet that seals right here? One, all of this now gets exposed. So you have a little bit more drippage because all the beer that's in here needs to come out. This is now all exposed to air and oxygen and bugs and bacteria and grossness that can get in there and make it gross and moldy and gross.
And more bugs.
Fruit flies, actually, in the summer, especially if you're keeping your kegerator out in the garage or, somewhere like that where fruit flies have easy access to them, love to live in here because there's bunches and bunches of sugars and deliciousness for them to be able to survive. Another reason that's bad is because it's sugar, and when sugar dries out, it tends to cement things together. So there's a lot of instances where people end up breaking the little knobby on top because all of this dried out and it's cemented it all in there, and now they're trying to reef on it and break their stuff. It's just a much, much inferior style of faucet, and in all honesty, they're generally only, in all levels, they're generally only $1 cheaper than the forward sealing. So just go for the forward sealing. 1 second.
Bless you.
Kazoo night.
Yeah, forward sealing is definitely the way to go.
On that, there's a lot of different forward sealings ways to go. We found 2 of the best is Intertap, or it's now called Nucatap, same thing, as well as Parallax. They function almost exactly the same. Nucatap generally tends to be a little bit cheaper. They also have a fun little feature of being able to interchangeable tap the front. Intertap. Anybody? Anyway, you can add, like a stout faucet on and turn one of these into a nitro tap, or you can't with a Parallax. Parallax are super nice. They're considered one of the absolute best on the market. Pour really well.
But the reason Parallax are expensive is because they were the first people to kind of make that really popular.
Pioneer the forward sealing.
And realistically, the technology that's going into competitors now should be dropping the Parallax prices, but it's really not yet. So Intertaps are, if you want to be cost effective, the best way to go.
Yeah. You won't notice a huge difference between the Intertaps to the Parallax. The Nucataps too. The Nucatap also does actually have you can't see it at all. It's called a Nucatap because on the inside of here, this little guy is shaped like an old hydrogen bomb, actually. I mean, it literally just looks exactly like that, which is great for a hydrodynamic flow, which is science words for beer flows better through here and over the central parts than it does on a lot of other taps, so you get less foamy, smoother pours.
Yeah.
But the Parallax are super nice. Definitely go for forward sealing. 100% go for forward sealing. Spend that extra $1 that it's going to cost you to get forward sealing. Speaking of Adam Chumbly, here's an Irish Red from him that he sent to us.
Thanks, Adam.
Yay!
Adam, I accidentally drank some of the other beers that you sent.
And by some, he means all. Damn it. So send us more. Because there were, the Silver City, we can buy that off the shelves, so maybe not that one. But the other 2 that I can't remember that we couldn't get, send us those. And maybe more. Send us beer? Send us beer.
We'll send you beer. I owe you a beer. I'll send you beer.
Yeah, whatever. Anyway.
DM me your address.
So, that's that on that.
Peter,
Let's do it.
I have that for you.
Oh, never mind.
Ledger 89.
Matt's gonna help us send you beer.
Matt's gonna send you beer. Ledger 89. Have you seen the difference in grain crop discussed at the beginning of the year? No, we haven't experienced it yet on that.
Not too much.
But
other than price.
Yeah, prices have started to go up for it. Most of the time, the maltsters do have a pretty decent backstock of everything going on. And I think they probably are attempting to do a good job of blending crops to help buffer that until we get all the way into pure last year's crops that just weren't as good. Yeah. We haven't noticed it yet, except for price. More so on the German malts, especially like Weyermann, but those guys got rocked this year in crops. It was not fun time to be a German maltster.
Grains don't necessarily go straight from harvest into the malting process. A lot of times there's like a sorting process that happens after harvest that makes it so that we kind of separate grains by grade, and then there's kind of a bidding process that goes on and people decide what they're going to buy, and that's how grains are bought. Unless a mass company owns their own fields and everything like that, in which case it's a little bit more streamlined.
Yeah. Hendrik Potgeier. Anyway, hi gents. Where do you stand on wheat infused beer? It's a really cool concept. It happens. We have a couple of customers that do that on their own.
If it was legal, I would brew it here. I would probably not drink it, personally.
Nah. I mean, my stance on that is each their own. If you enjoy that, if you enjoy it, go for it. It's a fun concept to do because they're so close genetically, you can, it'd be cool to see somebody try to mimic hop flavors using some different marijuana strains and terpene profiles.
Yeah.
That'd be fun. All right, Nocturnal Brewer. Is it better to control flow from the keg or the faucet? So what he is talking about is a flow control faucet, or maybe having a flow control down on your keg. And there's a number of reasons you could be using that, mostly for line length. Peter hit on that a little bit earlier. Is it better to go keg or faucet? For me, I think I might like it better at the faucet. I like the restriction to be almost exactly where you're pouring out of that. That way you have proper pressure. So if you see a flow control, it'll normally have a little knobby on this side, and it basically means you can open and close the width of the hole, of the flow hole, right on the faucet. If you have a short line, you have really high pressure on your keg, really cool, because you can dump it down and, you can still pour perfect beer and stuff like that. I think I personally would like it better on the faucet. In my brain, that feels like having the pressure push all the way up against the faucet would be a little bit better for me, but I haven't done enough experiments, I guess, to say that one inherently works better than the other.
There's a lot of things that go into it in terms of like how carbonated the beer is and how clean your lines are. If your lines aren't super consistent in terms of how clean they are, or if there's anything that's going to cause a nucleation site, then obviously the shorter the line, the better. Control it with the faucet. Faucet's easy to clean. But you're trying to reduce turbulence to the line and basically control that pressure all the way through. So you want carbonation to stay in the beer as much as possible and just not break out because of the pressure going through the faucet.
That's why I think it's better to have the flow control at the faucet, because you have that consistent pressure pushing up against the faucet rather than pushing up against the coupler pressure change through the line.
But when it comes to the CO2 going into your keg, that's what never changes. Well, that's what changes depending on how you want your beer to serve, carbonated wise.
Yeah. All right, Funky Brewer. You guys said that with an Anvil Foundry, the water to grain ratio should be 1.5 quarts per pound of grain. I've been unknowingly using 1.9. Question being, is grain absorption subject to change? Yes and no. Grain absorption changes depending on what grains you're using, but generally a single grain remains at a consistent rate of absorption. So if you're using flake grains, they have a much better potential to absorb more water than, say, roasted barley does, because that is just so fried and cracked. But roasted barley will always pretty much absorb the same amount of water every time. So, so
based on if 10 pounds of grain isn't the same, is what he's saying. So 10 pounds of a stout recipe is going to absorb way differently than 10 pounds of a New England IPA recipe.
Yes, 100%, because you're using different grains, and different grains have different absorption rates. Same grains have same absorption rates. Different grains have different absorption rates. If you're asking if there's a different grain absorption rate through the infusion of mash water, no. If you added 1.5 quarts of water per pound of grain as your strike water, it does not change your grain absorption rates if you added 1.9 pounds. You have the same grains, they absorb them the same no matter how much water you add on there. I guess I don't know. Different grains absorb differently. Same grains absorb the same. Doesn't matter the amount of water you put on top of it. Short story. Right there. All right, Nocturnal Brewer. I just picked up a couple of flow control ball locks, and I'm not having the best of luck with flow unless I crank up the CO2 volume a lot. Back to the flow control thing that Nocturnal asked earlier. That would be my assumption, to having the flow control on the ball lock or on the keg itself, is that it would just cause that problem that you're having. So,
We already asked that question because I jumped
yeah.
ahead and got that one already taken care of.
He asked, how about Voss for the things, and Voss is in the Quake. We went on that. All right. When to and when not to reuse yeast for the next batch.
Anytime you use a lot of hops and can't strain them out, anytime you got high protein, anytime it starts to look really gunky, honestly, I would say
Don't.
I don't
You
know what
were
you're
going to
doing.
put them all together, so I'm just grabbing a duotite so we can explain the duotite before you get them all put together.
Oh, got you.
Yeah.
Smart. Yeah, so whenever I'm trying to reuse yeast, I like to plan ahead and just do a light base version of one beer and then a stronger base version of that same beer. And then usually I nix it. We don't have lab capabilities, our equipment and everything like that. We can't perfectly make sure we're isolating a strain. So if you want to be able to know exactly what yeast you're using, the more times you run that yeast over batches of beer, and especially the higher alcohol and the hoppier, the more you're risking that yeast mutating or just getting sluggish.
Also coming off of that, if you have a lot of trub left over in there, I mean, you're making a beer with a lot of hops. A lot of it went into the fermenter, which a lot of the time is okay because the yeast can sit on top, separate out that material from your actual beer. You don't see a negative impact in that beer. But now you just shoved it in a new beer and you have these really old plant materials and proteins that are going into it. If you are going to do it, the yeast should almost look like yogurt. Just super clean, creamy, thick, and delicious. I mean, literally yogurt. If it has particulates in it, I wouldn't reuse it because you're introducing some random things into a new beer. And like Peter said, start light and start small in alcohol and then start to move up the scale on that. If you're doing pitching, don't go big to small. That's not going to work out very well. And every time that you use a yeast, just keep in mind there are hundreds of successive generations of that yeast that are now adapting to live in the beer that you just fermented. So the yeast you're repitching, well, almost exactly the same. It's just a little bit different than the yeast you had out of the package that you tossed in there. Now you do it again, and it changes just a little bit again. And by about the 5th generation, you may have a yeast that produces nothing like the yeast that you originally produced. So for me personally, I only repitch like once if it's super nice, clean, creamy yeast in there, and I don't encourage anything after 3 to maybe 5 successive generations. For other people, if you have great lab practice. And what I mean by that is keeping everything super clean, crispy, and clear. All right. Why Peter was confused and what I grabbed off the shelf. A couple of things why we like this Komos Kegerator. One, the Nuka taps that I was holding, those forward sealing. These are the stainless steel on there. They are awesome. They are great taps. Just beautiful for it. Another reason is the line that they give you. The line that they give you on this is actually a double-walled EVA barriered line. So it's a little bit thinner, but it has an inner coating on the line to that. It is antibacterial. It helps not absorb colors or flavors. So if you take care of this line should be able to last you for life. Unlike vinyl, which you should pretty much be replacing once a year. Vinyl's cheap for a reason. It's easy to replace. This stuff is much better. And if you want a more in-depth explanation of what EVA barrier is, go watch that video that Peter put up onto our page, and he will explain the differences. Huh?
I'm gonna go find it.
Nice. Our moderator's gonna find it and maybe link it in. So, beautiful line, and they give you enough of it. That's another thing in kegerators. Generally, a lot of kegerators that are out there on the market do not give you enough line. They're great at making refrigerators, don't know very much about beer. These guys give you enough line to have a proper pour. Another thing that they do that's super cool, super easy, especially for the home market, is everything is connected by these duotites. Did you do duotites in the same video or a different one?
I don't know if I did duotites in an assembly video of one of these. Yeah.
Okay. So we have a little bit of an explanation. We did do an assembly video on this here Kegerator. Go watch it. It's pretty fun. We did a little bit of explanation on this. We might get into them in, a short video later on. Duotites are basically line clamps and connectors. This will be a T1, but They also have ones, connect directly onto your ball locks. They're threaded on the back, so you can connect it to your ball locks. You can connect it to your regulator. And this is the beauty of a duo-type. Hang on one second.
To the gas line. The gas line's connected to the regulator. The regulator's connected to the CO2 tank. And that's how I put gas in beer.
And that's it. It's connected.
Boom.
Perfectly sealed. This works on a compression technology on there. When you put it in, it compresses the line around. It seals to everything. You can't pull it off. But if you find out you messed up, you just hold the top. No, it's not going to come. You gotta hold top off.
Push down the little thing.
There you go. It comes right off. Duo-tights are really nice, really easy to preserve your lines for that.
And they make putting these things together relatively quick, which is awesome.
Yeah. I will say if you are running a high pressure system line, something like a nitro line, you may not want to use duo-tights. We haven't experimented with if they can hold up to the extreme pressures of that, because that's a lot of poundage. But they work perfectly for your normal CO2 lines. These things are awesome. Quick change is really cool. So that's another reason why we really love these guys and the Kegerators on them. All right.
Tim, I'm going to pause real quick because I just saw the best question from Bitter Reality. Why are there only 22 likes?
Yeah, like
that's a question button for you people. It's not like the smash button. Just like it.
That's going to be our tagline when we upload our Pornhub account.
Yeah.
Like the smash button.
Like the smash button.
By the way, this is what I call the most practical wrench in existence.
Honestly, I mean, it really is. It's fantastic.
And then, Tim, I'm also going to pause. Adam wants to have any feedback on his beer since we've been drinking it.
Yeah.
It has a little bit more of that alfalfa-y kind of funk, what I get from using some sort of Irish ale yeast than the Bardic one did. I appreciate that, but it comes across a little bit brighter, and I think it's hoppier. So I don't know what hops you used or what the IBUs came in at. Not the IBUs really matter, but the amount of hops it used. I can read.
No, it's not.
You liar.
The IBUs is not on the can. The alcohol percentages.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, or the other things.
And a thing.
Yeah, being a relatively lighter beer too, that's probably what's pushing forward the hops a little bit. But yeah, overall, I enjoy that alfalfa-iness. If I wanted anything different, it would be more clarity, less hoppy, and a slightly darker roastness.
I think it was poured maybe a little hard. His is definitely clearer than mine is, and I'm getting a lot of yeast bite. I'm getting some protein coming off of that I don't know is necessarily in the beer, because to me that's what's dominating, is just a little bit of yeastiness in there. Other than that, I really like this. Would be a really nice quaffable. Maybe if you could keep almost everything in it but drop the alcohol by at least 0.5% and leave that in residual sugars, I think I might like that a little bit more, a little more
Finish a
easily
little
drinkable.
20
I
IBU
like
according to
all the
Adam.
flavor.
20 IBU.
20.
Overall, it's nice. It actually does have a little bit of caramel presence, but I'm hoping it didn't come from caramel malts. Just knowing you.
He probably did just to make us drink it.
And then,
Dang it!
Then the hops are Kent Golding, and he used darkness as the yeast.
Okay, yeah, I can assume the Kent Goldings for a little bit of grassiness and that classic English earth. Yeah, and darkness is classic Irish ale. Came across a little bit alfalfa-y, which I like the funk in Irish ale. I just like to point it out to people because I can pick up on it pretty well. And so that way you know what Irish ale provides.
Yeah.
Yeah, overall I like it.
Yeah.
I think the clarity would be the one thing that would be like, if this was, had time to drop out, get rid of a little bite, let the hops just kind of mellow into it a little bit.
Be a little bit better. It'd be awesome. It is a great beer anyway.
Also, if you're sending us homebrew, send me the recipe so that way I can give them the information when they ask for it.
Matt is way more organized
Yes.
than any of us. Hit him up on Discord or any other way that you can hit him up.
Yeah. Because, that's why he's the moderator. All right. Bitter Reality Brewing. How do you like the Komos compared to other comparable Kegerators? I'm debating on buying an 8-tap versus building a second 8-tap Keezer. And there's a reason we carry the Komos. For the price point, what they give you, we think that they're pretty much some of the best on the market. There may be some other smaller local companies that we just don't have access to. They're doing something cheaper and better. But for what we think that everybody pretty much around the world can get a hold of, because the company that does sell these does ship everywhere in the world, is the Komos. They have a beautiful product on it. They give you great stuff, great hardware for it, great lines. The duotites are really nice. It's just a really good setup for it. So if you're looking to buy it, I would say this has got to be your baseline. You can go above it. You can spend more money on that, get some more bells and whistles than the Komos. But for me, the Komos is about the baseline of what I look at in a kegerator. If you're building your own keezer, man, there are so many limitless options out there for you to do awesome and amazing things. They can be more inconvenient. They can be way more convenient depending on the type you get. I mean, if you get a chest freezer, it's a heck of a lot more inconvenient to lift a keg up and over that side and place it in than it is to have that door right up front. But, you know, if you're like Bro Ryan and you like to work out and you skip leg day and you need to do some squats and deadlifts, lifting that up and over might be a good thing.
Yeah.
And for that reference, go back to our live stream with No Drought.
No, Bro Ryan is it's a Fat Logan. Buff Logan.
Buff Logan.
Buff Logan.
Buff Logan. I'm sorry, I did. Well, it's also Bro Ryan, but
Yeah,
it's
Bro
Buff
Ryan,
Logan.
yeah.
Buff Logan. Definitely Buff Logan.
His old nickname was 2-inch Ryan.
3-inch Ryan. Hey, yeah, I gave him a little credit. All right. So, anyway, on that, kind of depending on what you're looking for. It's a way easier package just to get one of these, put it all together, and fire it up and wait and go. It can be much cheaper to build a keezer on that, especially since you can get chest freezers for a pittance nowadays. You can customize it to be exactly what you want to be. So,
I don't know, every time I built a chest freezer, it has not been cheaper.
Peter, what was
you
that?
can get a
Because
chest
I couldn't
freezer
hear
for
that.
Every time I've built a chest freezer, it's not been cheaper.
You can
like-
get a chest freezer for like $50.
Or not a whole keezer, because I end up doing like the
Yeah.
shanks, like the. I think the last time I did one, I spent like over $150 just on the wood for the collar.
Yeah.
So
That's if you are frugal and very conscious about your budget, you can get the same hardware and put it into a keezer for generally cheaper. But that is kind of the problem of, you know, building your own, is what Peter says, is it gets so much, it's super fun, super easy to go overboard on those and just put all the bells and whistles on it.
you end up wanting to buy chalk paint to chalk paint the front, a little border on the front of the keezer.
Put like some teak, maybe some purple heartwood around,
Yeah.
you know, the
We did
edge for some
poplar
accent.
last time.
Yeah,
But I mean, all wood like these days is just crazy expensive. So
my wood's cheap.
no, it's not.
It's the price of my wife's boobies. Anyway, moving on. I'm sure she's happy that I brought her in. So, in all honesty, I mean, for the convenience sake of it, for how good these things are, for the price you're going to pay, it's almost easier just to straight up buy one.
Yeah.
You know, depends on what you want to put on. If you want some super fancy bells and whistles, I say build it. Give yourself a project.
Do your bells and your whistles.
Okay. My father, Jimmy J, my father-in-law got a commercial kegerator where the tower looks
Just
like...
Brewing, what's up?
Yeah! Where it looks like it twisted in to lock. I bought a new 2-tap tower without knowing this. Tips for install. Was thinking a sealed wood slab, maybe. Yeah. That might work.
What's the slab?
A sealed wood slab that he can attach his tower onto.
Oh, right on top of the.
Because he's saying his old tower was like a twist lock type, and he bought a new 2-tap tower that's a screw-in type.
Oh, just mounted to the slab. Okay.
That is also kind of a weird thing about kegerators we should throw out right now. Most of the guys that are really good at refrigeration but not so good at beer stuff put very much proprietary things on their kegerators.
So 2.5-inch towers and like weird screws and
weird connections. So when they break, you pretty much have to buy that stuff from them.
Yeah.
A lot of the time, we end up people bring them in, we end up replacing everything anyway. So get yourself one that has the good stuff. Komos. Anyway.
Also, Jimmy, if you send me pictures, I can have my engineering father look at it and see if he can give any advice.
Jimmy, Matt was saying if you send him some pictures, then he can give it to his dad and see if he has any advice on that. You know, as a fellow engineer, though, sometimes we way overthink that shit.
Oh, yeah.
Mechanics are not wrong when they say a lot of engineers are useless because we think it works really great on paper, just not in practice. You're like, you know what? You were right.
That was my dad's biggest piece of advice when teaching was get on the floor.
Like, actually use the stuff you design so you can make sure that it works. And I say that as I went to college for engineering, so I'm one of those guys. And I do it all the time. You can ask him.
Yep.
Anyway. I don't know, buddy. I mean, that'd probably be one that we'd have to look at more. I think you probably have a pretty good idea of whether it'd work or not. Just make sure it's super solid attached, and if you're drilling into the top, don't hit any coolant lines.
Also, we mic'd up our guy in the chair over there, so let us know how he's sounding, because I try to make him sound really far away still, but also that you can hear him. So let us know if you can actually hear what he's saying, but it just sounds like he's far away. That was my goal.
That's why I haven't been correcting you, Tim, is I was wondering how long it would take you to notice.
Yeah, I can't actually see that. The bright light, and it's right behind the computer. So, yeah.
Blinded by the light.
Rubbed down like a douche in the middle of the night. I think there's a conversation about taps going on here with Riv and Bitter Reality.
Oh, Jess says he sounds perfect. He sounds very authoritative. Oh, I put him on, so I don't know, mess with the effect buttons.
Yeah.
I put you on like
that's why I was
hallway.
so mad at you. That's right, because Chumbly sent us Boundary Bay and Kolshan, which are both amazing. We can't get Kolshan over here very often. Boundary Bay we can, which is just phenomenal. And Boundary Bay Scotch Ale on cask is like life-changing. Also, their IPA on cask is phenomenal, and that convinced me to put IPAs on cask.
I was going to say Boundary Bay was my first craft brewery.
Kolshan is so good. I hope you enjoyed those.
I did.
I will say, from what I know of the Silver City, yours I would prefer over Silver City.
The Silver City, I don't know if I...
Rich Top Red.
Yeah, that one was also...
Silver City does a good job. They make some really good beers on that. Yours was better.
Yeah, I would put yours above both of those. I actually probably put yours in the same lane as the Boundary Bay.
Yeah, did Kolshan? I haven't had the Kolshan Irish Red. I've had a lot of Kolshan that I super enjoyed. So, but Boundary Bay is so solid.
Out of all of them, my consistent thought was, yep, this is an Irish Red.
This is an Irish Red.
Except for when you got to the small brewery one, that one was like oddly bitter. Like it tasted, there's some weird acidity and weird bitterness going on, but
the Kolshan one.
No, the other one, not the Boundary Bay, not the Kolshan, not the Silver City, the other one, the fourth one.
There was a fourth. Well, he only told us two. Whatever.
One of them was.
Yeah. No, he literally just on what he said on a comment right now.
Oh, gotcha.
Yeah. Oh, Boundary Bay is delicious. Like that's a brewery more people need to drink. Anyway, can you show me the inside of the Komos? I kinda.
Yeah, that's why I came over and opened the door.
Open it up. I'm pretty behind.
You've been having good conversation. You're not behind.
Do you have any recommendations on the best ways to keep taps sanitary? Yeah, forward sealing is one of the best ways. In all honesty, that's not just the plug forward sealing again, because you should be using them. But forward sealing is one of the best ways because, again, it closes at the very front of the tap, and you only have a faucet, and you only have a very little bit to clean. Then two things that will help with that. Some sanitary plugs. There are other ones that go over the front.
Which is different than hygienic plugs.
Yeah. It is, actually.
Yeah.
Yeah. Anyway, they got the little brushes on there. One, it helps keep flies out of there. It helps keep a lot of stuff out of there. The little brush helps scrubby-dubby it just quite often. We keep a spray bottle of Star San around. Any kind of sanitizer on that, even just water would be better than nothing. And then after you're done using it, just spray right up there into the top of the tap. Hang on, let me look. Yeah, it looks like you can see me on that. So you just take the spray bottle, spray it right up into the top of the tap, let it drip out. Take that guy, stick it right in there, and away you go. That should really help keep everything really nice and sanitary, really clean for you. Again, forward sealing is going to be way better than rear sealing on that. Even if you spray it out with the rear sealing faucets on there, there still is probably going to be some residual stuff you're going to have problems with in the long run. So just do the forward sealing if you have a option to do it. But that's how we keep it clean. A little bit of Star Sand spray and these plugs.
And away you go.
Tim, I'm gonna pause you on questions and jump to another like real good Kegerator question before we get to 10.
Yeah.
Adam asked, I've read fans are needed for towers, leads to foamy beer from warming lines in the tower. Thoughts?
So you just saw Peter wave this line tube thing. Here, let me see that real quick. This guy right here, besides being a fun toy, most good kegerators will have some sort of tube like this or something like that. And this actually will connect directly from the fan on the inside. And then you take this part and run it right up to the top of the tower. So you are getting direct cold air flowing directly into this tower. Also, most good kegerators, you can't really see it, will have insulation on the inside of their towers to help keep them cold. But you are right. If you do not have cold air going to your tower, there is going to be a temperature difference from your tower. There you go. There is going to be a temperature difference from your tower to the inside, and that temperature difference in your lines is going to warm your beer a little bit, and you can have foaming issues because of that. That is a very true statement. Komos and most good kegerators will solve that problem by having that tube directly from the cooling fan into the tower, providing direct cold air right into your tower and avoiding that. That is something that's harder to avoid in a keezer, especially if you're using a tower on your keezer, because most freezers don't have fans. One way you can solve that is instead of doing a tower, put shanks through the side. Make sure there's enough inside length on the shank that the shank gets cold, and then it keeps your beer cold all the way through. If you don't chill it down, you will have temperature difference foaming problems.
Fun fact, when you get kegerators like this, if you're meant to assemble them, check the length of this, because a lot of times they send this too long, so you actually have to cut it to the correct length to make it so you don't have a bunch of extra tube to manage.
Now it's a different fun sound.
No?
No.
As someone
I was ready
wearing
for it.
headphones, I
Yeah.
don't like that sound at all.
What?
As someone wearing headphones, that's coming in really piercing into my ears.
Nice. Yes. All right. Jimmy J, thoughts on CM Becker faucets? They claim to have a truer flow control than competitors. Give us one, and we'll tell you. Contact them and tell them to send us one, and we'll make a video on it. You're comparing that to a Nuka Tap. Performing a single infusion Dunkelweizen next week. What would your mash temperature be? My infusion temperature, probably 150 to 145, where most of my beers are. But I like that. I like the 150 range to get both alpha and beta working. Drops down a little bit, so beta starts working way more than alpha, and you get a really nice, highly attenuable work. It's what I prefer.
And good job, Jimmy, calling out that temperature as well.
There you jump. Oh, yeah. Okay. How far out do you guys plan beer batches with hop and grain inventory?
I was going to say you guys plan.
Yes, actually. Yes and no. So, for example, when we... I can't even say when we do big batches. There are some batches of beers that we super plan for. Our next batch of Reese's Puff Porter Natural 20 collab will be brewed mid-April. We're going to have all that stuff probably end of March ready to go so we can just get down there, make it. Probably not mid-April. It'll probably be early April. Anyway, we know that one. We know that one's coming up because we're releasing it on May 15th for Reese's Day.
May the 15th be with you, Jay?
Yeah. The red that I have down there, I mean, that one's been planned out for a couple of weeks. I use a little bit of different specialty malts for that, so I brought those in a couple of weeks ago. Most of the time, I browse through either our getting old yeast or Peter buys some really fun malt or a different type of hop or an 11-pound bag of elixir, and which I appreciate. I actually do. I like elixir. I'm going to make some good beers out of that. But, and then I look at it and go, I wonder what we can make from this. Browse some malts upstairs, and away we go. I will say about a preparation is usually about a day in advance or maybe about 6 hours in advance. Because we have the homebrew shop, it allows us to make beers on the fly. We have so many different ingredients in here. We usually stock everything up enough that a 2-barrel batch really doesn't matter that much. I'm using at most 110 pounds of grain, and I know that for a fact just because that's all my mash tun can take. I maxed it out a couple of times. 110 is it. I can squeak 115 maybe if I have some rice hulls in there, but that adds to the weight. Anyway, so generally being in the homebrew shop, I have all the different yeasts, I have all that different stuff. The only thing that I really need to think ahead and plan for ahead for is my yeast. If we're making a beer and I only have one homebrew package and I meant for 5 gallons, I'm making 65 gallons of it. I need to make a yeast starter. Generally, that'll happen 24 to 48 hours ahead of time. That way I can pitch it at high Krausen. So maybe 2 days. Maybe. Sometimes we can do a yeast starter and then decide that day what we're making. Sometimes we're using entire packages of wasted grains that just on the front will say Bob or Jeb. Jeb always picks his stuff up, but I'm going to say his name anyway.
Yeah.
And then I have no idea what I'm making.
I'm just happy you didn't say my name because I usually just make it while I'm here.
Yeah, he doesn't leave his stuff. Yeah, it's just fun sometimes too. So sometimes there's a lot of thought and prep, and most of the time there's really not. There's a lot of whim, and there's a lot of
whimsy.
There's a lot of willy nilly, and as you know, Spencers don't say willy nilly.
That's right.
Yeah. So there we go. It's really random and whimsical and stuff.
Okay, I think the next question is going to be Scott's question.
Oh, dude, oh, wow. I am so far behind on these.
That's why I'm keeping track.
Well, I'm on KO, actually.
Shout one at us.
KO, I use Puro 2 tank with a 0.5 micron wand set to 1 liter on the regulator. What's a good amount of time to aerate 6 gallons? If you're using an O2 stone, and I mean, no matter really what you have it on, an O2 stone and pure O2 can get a. Sorry, sirens are gonna come. Can get a homebrew batch, 5 gallon, 6 gallon, oxygenated in a matter of minutes. Honestly,
yeah.
So
depending on your flow rate, I mean, I've seen studies that have it almost over oxygenated within a couple minutes. Not that that's super easy to do. Don't worry too much about over-oxygenation, but you're probably good within a minute or two.
If you're using an O2 stone, a minute or two, that's about it. Yeah, unless you have a super, super, super low flow rate, but you haven't done that. All right. Going through. I have a huge cat. Oh, okay. We're already there. We're already there. We got that guy.
Who's closest to bingo? We got anybody there?
Half the base was Red X for Chumblies.
Is that on the bingo
And no caramel malts, Peter.
I'm not going to say it.
There we go. I'm on Scott right now.
Okay.
Scott Crosby asked me about Simpson's double roasted crystal malt before. I still have not had a chance to use that. Maybe that'll be no, because I'm making a 7-barrel batch of red.
It's actually roasty. It'll make an amber taste like a brown.
Maybe we'll make a brown with it.
Yeah, sounds good.
Like just straight up DRC, a little bit of Halcyon.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I'm down.
We'll use that. We'll make a nice little mid-color beer out of it, and stay tuned
For the Jerry's Brown.
Yeah. Dun, 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 na, na, na. Happy to be here.
It's out of the rock, yeah.
Sorry, I'm going through. If you found some questions, I just got to Scott. So if you have some questions
Yeah.
over, you can shout them out.
A bunch of the ones after Scott's, we kind of all went over.
Yeah.
Jimmy says no one's ever complained about it. A too long of a hose, Peter.
Good, yeah, good point, good point.
Right.
My wife has. That was a difficult gardening
Actually,
experience.
here's a good one. Daniel, sometimes my tap gets a clog, and the next morning the stream splits and gets all over the floor. How do I stop that?
Floor ceiling faucet.
Yeah. That's actually almost exactly what we're talking about when beer dries up in there and it turns into cement or gets really gummy. That is exactly it. So what's happening to you is you're having beer dry somewhere on the inside that's actually creating a split. And so the beer, while coming out, is coming out in two different directions until it either redissolves those sugars or pushes that concretion basically out. So that's a reason to get forward sealing faucets. It's also a reason to do a little spritzy spritz in your faucets after you're done using them and to use these guys. So that's just, it really helps save headaches on things like that. And that is exactly what we're talking about when we talk about beer drying on the inside. It doesn't take long and it causes problems like that. So take care of your taps. It'll take care of your beer.
Okay, and then next one is going to be Tom Sills. How long should I leave my fermenting beer on US-05? Been stewing for 2 weeks. Is still going after stalling.
Still going after stalling.
Is it stalling or is it still going?
That's a little confusing. How should you leave your fermenting beer on US-05? How long should you leave beer on yeast? Not that long. I am not a fan or a proponent of the secondary racking, not secondary fermentation. I'm not fermenting things twice. But racking your beer off the yeast cake just for a little bit of clarity, I think that's a perfect opportunity for you to infect your beer and oxidate your beer, and it really doesn't help out that much. That being said on that, you shouldn't leave beer on yeast for over, say, 3 months. After that time, you're going to get something called autolysis happening, which is yeast breaking down and releasing all the bad stuff that it absorbed back into the beer. You don't want autolysis to happen. Most of the time it presents itself as a very meaty and or umami or soy sauce flavor in beers. So you shouldn't leave your beer on yeast, I would say, over 3 months. If you're asking how long should you condition your beer while it's still on yeast, even though it's done fermenting, honestly, it kind of depends on what you're doing with it. If you're going to condition it on the yeast, get it to crash fully out on that, clarify, and then rack it off, that long, as long as it takes to clarify out. If you would rather clarify it in a closed system like a keg or something like that, pull it out. If it's done fermenting, then it's done fermenting, and you shouldn't leave it in the fermenter for too much longer without an intent or purpose for that.
Greg H is the next one.
Yeah, well, there was one right above that. I am actually also disappointed that Stefan Studemeyer is not here.
He's trying to get a bingo card. Don't answer the bingo card questions.
It's fine though because I wanted to say it just rolls off his
Stefan
tongue.
Stoudemire. We're gonna make that. We're gonna make that the middle.
The free card.
Yeah, the free card.
The free card.
Well,
All right,
so
Greg
you want
H.
me to change beer of the week away? 'Cause
No,
beer of the
you're
week-
good.
You're right. Greg H. Do you guys use caramel malts in any beers? I put a half pound of Viking Caramel 600 in a Baltic porter, and it's barely noticeable with the carafa and roasted wheat. I did not know they made a 600. I haven't used a bunch of Viking malt though. Anyway, yes, every once in a while we do. We
Rinse ours out.
Yeah, and grab another one for Tim.
Yeah.
I went out for my wife's birthday last night, and we went to Bark, a rescue pub. So in Spokane, we have something called Bark, a rescue pub. It's amazing. It is an animal shelter within an amazing place to go eat.
I've heard they have amazing mac and cheese.
The mac and cheese was so good. The chicken and waffles was great. They have a fry board. I mean, like an extra large pizza tray
You, me.
that's filled with sweet potato fries, regular fries, salt and vinegar tots.
yeah.
Salt and vinegar tots.
That sounds delicious.
Oh, man. Like, go to Bark. I almost got a kitten yesterday.
You have cat to be kidding me, right, meow?
Right? Yeah.
You're still
Anyway,
thinking
jokes.
about going back and meeting that cat, aren't you?
if she is there in a month, yes, I will 100% get her. She was an amazing cat. A feisty little D-bag, but, she's a cat.
That's what cats do.
That's what cats do. Great little kitty. Somebody go adopt Coral. She's going to be a great kitty in a home. Anyway, do we use caramel malts? Yes, there are beers that we do use caramel malts in because you should use caramel malts in them because that's the way those styles were developed.
Here.
That's a great example. Honestly, I don't enjoy it out of proportion, but American IPA is also one of those that C60, C40 is really commonly used, but use them in right proportions. Get the percentages really down low. Get a tiny hint of sweetness, not a caramel bomb, and use it for a slight color adjustment.
And if we see you come in with a recipe and it has 2 pounds of C60, Tim might slap you.
I won't. I will make fun of you after you leave, though. Or while you're there. Maybe to your face. I don't know. Probably to your face. Probably to your face. But it is one of those things. Caramel malts are appropriate. There are places you should be using them. They do go in beers. Just use them in the right proportions in the right way, and don't make gross penny tasting beer just because a book said you should use 5 pounds of crystal in an IPA. Well, I'll read off here.
Yep, that sounds good.
Where were
Steph, on your question, I'm going to let Matt decide on that.
Oh,
Wait, which question?
I'm not going to say it because it's a bingo card. And if I say it, then you got to jump in.
What one are we?
I am actually trying to convert the 600 to the Levabon.
EBC to Levabon.
All right.
600 EBC. I'm going to guess it's 425 Levabon.
Well, so it's that's the wrong one. Yeah, I don't know. The websites are not being my friend today.
All right. So this last Irish red we have from is Whistlepunk here in town, and Whistlepunk is incredible. But I'm going to say this is the most yeast-derived flavor out of all of them, and I'm not enjoying it. It smells like 04.
He uses 04 for a lot, so I wouldn't be
Yeah.
surprised if it is.
Personal standpoint on that, for those of you out there wondering, 04 comes off very bread yeast to me most of the time. Not a flavor I'm personally overly particularly fond of. All right. Nocturnal Brewer. Irish Red are usually low in hops. How low is too low? And in all honesty, as long as you balance out the sweetness, you can go about as low as you want. Some of these beers just don't have that much hop in it. The Irish Red on it, you just need to balance out the sweetness of it.
And Peter, 600 EBC is about 225 Levabon.
Nailed it.
Wow, that's dark, especially for a crystal.
Oh, it's a crystal malt?
Yeah.
I had no idea what the conversation was about. I wasn't paying attention.
Viking Caramel 600.
Oh.
It may have been 60, and he just mistyped, but anyway. As long as you're balancing out the sweetness, honestly, I would say you could use very, very little to almost no hops if you're using something else to balance it out. Although I wouldn't use herbs because then you're going to push Scottish.
No. Some herbs could be appropriate, but it's, yeah, you're getting into different flavor worlds there. I think for a lot of our Irish reds, we've done something like in a 5-gallon batch, say like a half ounce of Magnum, or maybe less at the 60. So you're really not tasting any hops. You're just getting that alpha acid bitterness. Mm-hmm. It's a background character.
I really like the creaminess in this. He nailed the light toast.
Yeah, the yeast profile on this one comes across more mineralic, but it does have that breadiness to it too.
If the nose wasn't there, the smooth, creamy chuggability of this might be my favorite.
Comparing the two yeast profiles side by side, I want to say that the Irish ale almost perceives more citrusy now that I'm like going back in flavor because of how it comes across. It's like that alfalfa compared to this. This almost is like copper.
Yeah.
What else
Anyway,
we got?
this is way better as it warms up.
That Chumblies?
That Chumblies. It brings out way more fruitiness,
Oh yeah.
way more toastiness, a little bit more caramel, and it brings down that hop.
I got
Or
like,
not hop, the yeast.
yeah, you get like plum in there.
That's beautiful. All right.
Nocturnal brewer, Irish reds are usually low in hops. How low is too low?
Just
That's
did that.
that's when we just
We
did.
just did. Okay.
Rivera is 10 ounces of hops through the boil of an Imperial IPA too much, in your opinion? Yes and no. Depends on where you put that. If you put 10 ounces in at 60 minutes and boil it the whole damn time, that's going to probably be way too bitter to drink. If you put 10 ounces in with 5 minutes to go, that may not be enough hops.
No, I usually, for an Imperial IPA, 8 to 10 ounces is about appropriate overall. If you want a really big, especially if you want those big juicy flavors from Whirlpool, that's got to be a big addition. But the base flavor of an IPA you could probably get with just 4 ounces or 3 ounces of boil addition, and then get the rest in Whirlpool. It's about where you put them.
Yeah, it really is. No, that's not too much. That sounds like a decent amount for a 5-gallon batch, depending on where you put the hops. Tom Sills, when the fermentation gets stuck, do I need to add yeast energizer along with the yeast package? Concerned with leaving yeast in the flavor from unused yeast. You're concerned with having a yeasty flavor in there from unused yeast. All right, a little bit of an odd question there because there's not really, or maybe you're talking about unused yeast energizer. There's not quite such a thing as unused yeast because it's a living thing and it's growing and multiplying. If you don't want the yeasty flavor in it, all you need to do is make sure you crash it out and clarify it so the yeast isn't in there. And away you go. If you're worried about the yeast energizer flavor being in there, usually the energizer rather than the nutrient here, we're talking specifically about yeast energizer, is in such low proportion that it will be used almost immediately, and even if it's not, it shouldn't leave a residual flavor. That's a very low proportionate thing that you add into a beer, and it should crash out if it's not used up. If you're talking about an actual yeast nutrient and you got it stuck and there's only a couple of points left, I'd be worried about that flavor sticking in. But as far as an energizer goes, no, I wouldn't be worried about that. Where are we at?
Jimmy is commenting on DRC tasting like Raisin Bran, both raisin and the cereal.
Yeah. Reverend KY, what's a good crystal malt to substitute for Red X? None. Absolutely none. You know what's a good substitute for that if you're thinking about crystal malt? Find a duck, sit on it. Anyway, all right, KY, I'm sorry. There isn't actually a great crystal malt substitute for that just because of the flavor of Red X, the diastatic power of Red X, in everything that it is. Red X is about 20 Lovibond, so if you're really looking to replace that with a crystal, C20 would be the equivalent to it, but that's going to give you all those sweet flavors and caramel flavors that Red X just isn't going to give you. If you can't find Red X or it's too expensive, Viking has Red Active Malt, which is extremely similar to that. That would be my suggestion to go with. Other than that, match the leva bonds and just try to use it in such low proportion it doesn't make a flavor impact. We're at Red X.
How does Stan feel about AB InBev? They are a company.
They are sure a company. You know, it's a company to follow. They make a lot of money. And I will 100% say AB InBev, Anheuser, specifically Bud Light brewers, are literally some of the absolute best brewers in the world. I don't care what you say. They literally are. To make something so consistent in such big proportions that has such a small flavor profile every single time is stupidly incredible. Do they make great beer? Meh. Are they amazingly good at it? Yeah.
If this video gets up to 50 likes, I'm just going to say this because this is a video I want to do with you guys. Blind tasting of a bunch of domestics.
Yeah, I'm down.
Yeah.
That
We've
goes
done
with
it.
And I'm going to mix in some commercial version of lighter lagers in there as well.
Yeah.
So some craft versions. So fun video idea.
Yeah, we're getting the Viking number for caramel.
Legendary
is
89.
I think 100 is 60.
Yeah, that's people catching up on us.
Oh,
Steph was trying to get us to
200.
do an NBC for bingo.
Yeah, you know, no.
I gave him an obligatory beverage sip.
Oh my God, they had a spiced pear margarita at Bark.
Oh, yeah?
Oh,
Really good?
there was a strawberry martini, a strawberry rhubarb martini that was just one about the best things I've ever had. But they garnished it with pickled strawberry.
Oh, that's
that-
delicious. Yeah.
oh,
No, that'll do it.
man.
Okay.
They are stepping up their game.
Yeah.
Jimmy actually was talking about that similar to Red X. I know that there is a Cara Red that's about 20 SRM, maybe split with Dark Munich 50-50 for similar to Red X.
Cara Red is Wireman, and that is equivalent to
It's kind of like a Caribbean.
Caribbean.
Yeah.
Pretty much.
So it's like a semi-Munich. Even then, you're not getting the diastatic power. There's no diastatic power in Cara Red. So
The red malts are
honestly,
really
just a Munich,
unique.
like a Munich or Munich 20. It's going to be flavor-wise, it's going to be
20.
pretty similar. It's just not going to be the same color.
Yeah.
The color is the difference because a 20 in Cara Red is going to be a little bit with that red color, but flavor-wise, it's just going to be way off. But the flavor-wise, just a flat Munich malt in that 10 to 20 range is probably going to be the closest substitute for Red X. You
Yeah.
just won't get that pop.
Yeah. All right. We're gonna making a sour with Philly sour. Should I fruit it during fermentation, after, or both? The place that I like to throw fruit in is at the very tail end of fermentation, where you have maybe 20 points of gravity left to go. Adding the fruit in at that point, for me, is usually the best. You still have a lot of really strong fermenting yeast in there, but it's not extremely active, so it's not going to blow off a lot of your volatile aromatics. It's going to take all the sugar out of it, but it's also not going to be too aggressive. I don't like adding fruit in at the beginning of fermentation. I think you lose a ton of really good flavors that get volatilized, that get blown off because of the aggressive fermentation. Adding it in after fermentation, personally, I think is a little bit dangerous because you're adding sugars into it. You could kick the fermentation back up if you haven't made sure that you put the yeast to sleep or killed them. So for me, it's at that very tail end of fermentation when you're like, yeah, it's got maybe a couple of days left, right there.
Ledger 89 wasn't the requirement for the Kegerator to be picked up at 10. Sounds like it's time for a live stream giveaway. One assembled Kegerator. That's right, it is one unassembled Kegerator, not this one. So the first person who super chats is $2,000. Free for the first person that meets those requirements.
We'll even ship it to you.
Lumpy Tribe has a question about hop stand.
Yeah. How much hops on average do to hop stand for a haze bomb? And what's too long to let them set at 180? How much hops is up to you and how much you want to add in there, honestly. I think especially if you're going at 180, the answer to that is when you get hop burn. That would be my answer. That will change for different hops. If you're using something that's really soft, really low in oil content, like a Galaxy, like a Nelson Sauv, Vic Secret, really low oils in that, really low bitiness. You can use a heck of a lot more of those than you could of something, say, like a Centennial that's going to be really strong and bitey. But yeah, I would say in a hop stand in Whirlpool at 180, use it like vanilla to your heart's content. And then just don't go too much to get hop burn. Don't do hop burn.
Milli Vanilla.
Yeah. Anyway, so on, as far as how long that is, generally you're going to have.
Thanks, Ledrill. It's on its way.
Whoa! Thank you much, guy. Along with that, how long is too long? Generally, I spend about 20 minutes in that time. A lot of the time when I'm doing hop stands and stuff, I'm just naturally letting it fall. I usually do a 190 to 180, and then maybe a second from 180 to 170. And I normally naturally just let that whirlpool and fall and cool down until it gets to that temperature range. A lot of the time that's about 20 minutes. Generally 20 minutes in a whirlpool is pretty good. You're getting most of your hop extraction on there. I wouldn't go longer than 45. Hour is probably excessive. I don't think you're getting anything beyond like a half an hour, 45. Not, you might be, but it might be so minimal it doesn't really make an impact. 20 has always been a good number for me.
I like that 20, and then keep the lid on too.
Yes, that's also a very important thing. Do keep your lids on. There is still steam coming off of there. There's volatile aromatics that are being released in that steam. So if you keep your lid on, they'll recondensate and drip back down into your beer and reinfuse into your beer. Keep your lid on. Keep those good smells in your beer. All right.
I think we just have one more question.
Yeah.
From Brian.
Uh,
Which, Brian, we appreciate the fact that you are up stupidly early. Also, you should sleep.
Stupidly early or smartly early?
Yeah. Mix in some cryo. Cryos are great for Whirlpool. Personally, I Whirlpool on the hop stand through whole leaf hops, but I put the whole leaf hops in my hop stand as more of a filter. And if I'm going to filter out my beer, I might as well make it hops and make it delicious. But cryos are incredible for that because they're not going to give you the harsh planty material. You're not going to get green grass. You're going to get hop flavor coming off of that. So those are amazing to add in Whirlpools. You can go longer.
You can do it. And time.
Yeah.
Who got the time on that?
Bitter Reality Brewing. People have been talking in the comments. People have been talking about the Philly Sour. Philly Sour does produce lactic acid first, and then it ferments out normally. So at the very beginning, you really won't see alcohol fermentation. You're going to see lactic acid producing fermentation, and then second day, you'll start to see, after fermentation has started, second day you'll start to see the alcohol fermentation kick up. It's really hard to judge acids at that point, especially if you don't have a meter for it, because there's still a lot of sugar left over, and it'll drop the perceived acidity of it. So it's a cool thing. I don't know. I've been making sours in a mixed firm way for so long that Philly feels like more work, but I enjoy the yeast strain. It's really cool. There's some really awesome things coming out of that.
Also, I'm just going to say, if you didn't catch last week's live stream, go back because we talked a lot about Philly and other sours.
Yes, we did. There was sour talk.
I think Philly's more or less a good opening into what we could do with a similar type of yeast and less of a good yeast by itself. I think it's an exciting yeast more than it is a good yeast.
I'll agree with that. It's super exciting that we're getting sack to produce lactic acid, and in the future we'll probably have much better yeast strains than Philly Sour. But somebody's got to be the first, and it's not a bad first. Any advice for bottle conditioning, aging big? Oh, you asked this already, Brian Murray. Shh. It's all right. Bottle conditioning, big beers and big aging beers. Is Brutan a good idea, or just Ascorbs in the mash? We go Ascorbs in the mash, but there's also other things in big beers that really help them age and bottle condition. One of it being Maillard, the extended boils that you should be doing in all of those beers, and you should be doing in all of those beers to create the beautiful flavors in there, is going to be something that also extremely helps out with aging. Maillard will protect from oxidation, and it turns it into other really delicious flavors. A lot of the time when you're getting those sherry-like flavors in the good quads, that is the Maillard reacting with oxygen. Not entirely, but that process is something that creates those really good flavors. So the long boil is really going to help out, and in my opinion, the long boil will help more than Brutan or ascorbic acids, but also ascorbic acids.
Yeah.
Alcohol is going to be another big factor for that. Alcohol is a preservative. It helps keep things fresh. So the bigger and boozier they are, the better they're going to age out and stand up to the test of time on that. So that's really going to help out as well. Proper storage temperature and conditions. Do not store them on their side. You are ruining your beer if you store it on its side. Store them upright. That's going to help create a layer of CO2 and protect against oxygen. At least cellar temperatures, so you at least want to reach 50 degrees or below for storing your beers. It doesn't have to be in a refrigerator, but it should be below 50 degrees. The warmer they are, the faster they're going to age, and the more disproportionate they're going to age. Some flavors will go way faster, and these ones can't quite catch up, where 50 degrees or below, they're roughly moving at the same rate. As far as the Brutan is a thing that people use to great success.
We haven't played around with it hardly at all, honestly.
Yeah.
Other than having it and having homebrew customers that use it, we really haven't done anything.
If you do your processes right, you shouldn't have to use something like Brutan, especially in big barrel or big beers like quads and Russian Imperial stouts.
Skyman 567 crystal malt and a white IPA. Yet I would do 100% crystal malt, single hop, white
Crystal
IPA.
wheat. Crystal wheat.
There we go.
100% crystal wheat, white IPA. It'll be beautiful.
White IPAs are really fun, and they're really simple. You make a basic wheat beer with 50% Pilsner, 50% wheat malt, or if you want to go 60-40, either way you can. If you go 60% wheat, use some rice hulls. Other than that, you get to play with a bunch of fun, bright IPA hops, and then add some spices, add some orange peel to it. Do something fun.
Do something delicious.
Add some peppercorns. Peppercorn white IPA. Make it, send it to us.
Elixir Saison IPA.
Yeah, I'd be down.
Yeah, okay.
Ooh, that's the next Saison in the series, or next wit beer in the series.
Next IPA whipper?
Yeah.
You could do that. All right.
It'll still go with the series.
Wit IPA, yeah. A hoppy wit.
Should a Tripel be bottled? Thoughts on kegging a Tripel? Thanks for the stream.
Yes and no. If you want to save some for later, bottle it.
Bottle some, keg the rest.
Yeah.
If you want it bottle conditioned, then you go ahead and put it in a keg and bottle condition it. Turn your keg on its side. Let it cellar in the keg.
Conditioning can happen in any vessel. I mean, bottle conditioning, we only call it bottle conditioning because it's in a bottle while it's conditioning. You can keg condition too in the exact same way you bottle condition. Throw in the right amount of sugars. It's much better and actually tastier if you throw it on its side, and you get the really long aspect of that. That's why lagering tanks are normally on their sides.
Get nice and clarified.
Yeah, and then bottle condition it, or keg condition it right there in the keg, and then bottle that way. Honestly, it can go either way. It depends on how you want to do it. If you want the absolute best thing for beer, the best storage device for beer is going to be cans.
And we're caught up.
Yeah, we're caught up. All right, so
Well, before we close out, I'm just going to call out the Discord. We're doing a monthly brew as close to style, and at some point in time, me and one of the other brewers, or if not both, will sit down and review the recipes that you guys submit on those, the beer pitchers. You have till the end of the month to do that Irish Stout, which I was supposed to brew but I didn't. And then please start giving me suggestions for April's beer style in the Discord, so that way we can plan ahead.
Bach.
Suggestion.
My Bach.
I was going to say, oh, yeah, because then it would be rated by May.
Yeah. Skyman, the Belgian Pils, and just pick the right Pilsner. Belgian Pils, German Pils, doesn't matter. Just there are flavors of Pilsner in every country.
Don't get too hung up on that. There are slight flavor differences between them, but if that's all you can get, then you use that and you make a great beer out of it, and you tell people it was Belgian Pils, because especially in something like that, they will never be able to tell the difference.
Yeah.
But yeah, do it. The German Pils is absolutely wonderful for it. Belgian Pils, I believe, is just like a little bit sweeter than German. German's a little bit more biscuity. At least that's what I experienced from we got it. Honestly, when we made beers out of it, it wasn't that much different.
Yeah. Like the smash button. Shout out to Jess Brewing for being on stream. I also saw Party Time Brewing. Check out their channels. Jess was only on here for like 5 minutes, and so go on to his most recent video, JUS Brewing, Jess Brewing, and comment, hey, you skipped out. You're such a loser for skipping out on the majority of the podcast, and it was super awesome, and you should be on next week. So do that. That's the rest of my advice. He had a really cool collab with Clawhammer Supply and Homebrew for Life not too long ago, so he puts out some good stuff. Go check it out.
Yeah, and then all the other people, and follow us and drink our beer, buy our merch. That's a plug, right? Buy our merch. It's online.
We have that.
It's
Yeah.
really cool. We have a Powerpuff shirt that's amazing.
Yeah, buy a Kegerator from us.
Yeah.
Ledrill's only got $1,999 to go.
We'll keep it running total. So yeah, thanks guys. Thanks for tuning in. It was we'll see you next week, right here at the same time, because our times definitely didn't change for arbitrary reasons that are silly.
Yep. After a while, Scooby-Doo.
Yay.